You're taking a look inside Kansas politics. Welcome in. I'm Denisha Richard. Senate Bill 180, establishing the Women's Bill of Rights. The bill is defining the definition of a woman and a man according to biological sex. Now, this will also affect public spaces such as a restroom, prisons, domestic violence centers, rape crisis centers, and other public areas. But it started quite the conversation on whether or not this bill is to protect the rights of women or to ignore the rights of the transgender community. And that's what we will discuss here today. Joining me right now is two opponents of the bill. We have Jay Bohannon. He is with the Mid-America LGBT Chamber of Commerce, plus DC Heegert. They are with the ACLU of Kansas. Thank you both for joining me today.
For sure.
Now, this Bill of Rights, proponents of the bill would say that it's a trailblazing move for the state of Kansas and for women's rights, but the both of you say that this is actually a step back. Jay, you say this is a step back.
Yes, I mean, proponents of the bill will say that it only defines biological sex. That's it. That is a fact. But the reality is it is a catalyst for so many bills that will impact so many people. Nowhere, if you read the actual literature and language in the bill, does it say anything about protecting women. It's only defining. So even the name itself is a misnomer. And then we get to all the things that are going to happen afterwards, right? Defining who can be in what spaces. This dismisses a lot of other people, which I'm sure we'll talk about, but it just isn't protecting women. I think that's a key thing that we need to know.
That it's not protecting women,
yes.
Right? So you have a unique experience, actually.
Yes.
You are a trans man. And so if this bill were to pass, for when it comes to public spaces, let's say a public restroom, where would you have to go?
Well, legally, once this bill is passed, it will define spaces. Technically, things wouldn't change, but I do believe very soon after we would see a bill that would define who can use what spaces based on biological sex. My biological sex is female. I still have uterus, ovaries, and vagina. I say that because that's specific language that's in the bill. So by this bill passing and things that come afterwards, legally, I would have to use the women's restroom.
When you were transitioning, you have mentioned that you were harassed visiting those spaces that were intended for women.
Yes. So early in my transition, before I had facial hair and even maybe looked more masculine, I would still use the women's restroom, and I'd go in and people would immediately say, "This is the women's restroom." And I'd say, "I know." And they're like, "You're not supposed to be here," right? And people are like, "You need to get out of here." I'm like, "I'm just trying to use the restroom," right? And so very early in my transition, I realized whether or not I'm comfortable using the men's restroom, I'm gonna have to start using the men's restroom because that's how the world sees me. Now, I wanna use the men's restroom because that's where I can go and not be harassed. If this bill gets passed, I have to start using the women's restroom because I could defy the law, that's totally an option, but as a black man in America, I have no interest in going to prison, right? So I'm gonna follow the law, which means I'm gonna go to the women's restroom. This is what's gonna happen. I'm likely gonna be harassed as I was before, but then I'll be forced to tell people, I'm in this restroom because one, I have a vagina. The law says people with vaginas have to use this restroom. And secondly, I'm just trying to obey the law, right? That'll be my scenario, which doesn't make me feel comfortable. And I'm sure every woman in the women's restroom will not feel comfortable. In this scenario, I want to know, how are women being protected?
Mm-hmm. This is a bill that you all say it doesn't protect women, and those are some of the reasons. And DC, as you hear Jay talking about his experience, do you think this bill protects women?
I think that Jay did a great job of describing what this bill is actually about, because, regardless of what it's named, when you look at the text of the bill and you look at what it would be actually doing in effect, it's not doing anything to protect women's rights. I've read it thoroughly many times, and I can't find any text in there that's doing something to protect women. To Jay's point, all it's doing is creating a definition of biological sex, a definition that's inaccurate, under-inclusive, and unscientific, as many doctors and folks have testified to. So that's really all the bill's doing. And so it's hard to find what they're protecting women from. And to Jay's point, really, it's just going to create other issues because it's going to create confusion around public access to public spaces and all these issues for women. But not only that, it's clear from the text of the bill what it's really about is trying to erase queer and trans people from existing in public spaces. They don't want trans folks to be able to access public restrooms, and that's what this bill is about. And you can see that by looking at the fact that this is sort of a copy-pasted bill that's pulled from a national website called womensbillofrights.com.
Copy and paste.
Yeah,
it's a copy and paste.
So it's not copy and pasted exactly, but it's nearly identical language. There's a couple provisions in our SB 180 that aren't in that same bill, but overall it's pretty much pulled from that website's kind of model bill policy and put into SB 180.
Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit more about this conversation. We have to take a quick break. We'll be right back. We're talking more about SB 180. You're watching Inside Kansas Politics. Stay with us.
It's spring break with the Topeka Tropics. Join the fun on March 13th for the home opener at the Stormont Valley Event Center. Kids 12 and under get free admission. Let's get tropical, Topeka.
You think knowledge is a powerful weapon? Here, you'll have plenty of ammo. We turn intelligence into tactical success. Explore more than 200 careers at GoArmy.com.
Want to be floored with a special deal? Check out the Floor Project. It's our inflation-fighting flooring sale. Before giant nationwide price increases, we bought truckloads of name brand luxury vinyl, carpet, wood, and ceramic tile. That means savings on top of savings, up to 60% on our hottest in-stock floors anywhere. Discounts on all labor and free financing for 12 months too. Save money, no worries. That's what the Floor Project is all about.
Our local businesses are filled with hard-working, dedicated entrepreneurs who are Kansas proud. Consider shopping these Kansas proud businesses. Businesses like Essentia Salon and Spa, Doughboys Pizzeria, and Shorey Automotive.
The Holton Weather Cam is sponsored by Ellis Boys, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram.
This week's Pets in Need Spotlight is Rolo. Rolo is a 4-year-old Terrier Shepherd mix. She is currently in foster care. Interested parties can work with an adoption counselor to schedule a time for a visit. Give Helping Hands a call today.
The 27 News Storm Tracker is sponsored by Wilson Tire.
It's spring break with the Topeka Tropics. Join the fun on March 13th for the home opener at the Stormont Valley Event Center. Kids 12 and under get free admission. Let's get tropical, Topeka.
Welcome back to Inside Kansas Politics. Today we're talking more about SB 180, and joining me are two opponents of that bill. We've got Jay and DC here with me today, and we just talked a little bit about what this bill truly means to you. And now what we really hear sometimes is that legislators, Kansans alike, some of them say, is this something we need to address right now? Is this a situation that we need to address at this time? DC, do you think it is?
You know, it's hard for me to understand what situation we're trying to address with these bills. So, you know, we're speaking about SB 180, but really any of the anti-trans bills that we're seeing in our legislature, they're not addressing real issues. You look at the bill trying to ban trans girls from playing sports. There has been no evidence of any trans girls causing harm in Kansas athletics. So it's confusing what issues we're trying to solve. Same with SB 180. There's no, you know, evidence of folks having issues with these public accommodations in Kansas. When you look at the hearings at the State House, it is full of, you know, written opposition to these bills by hundreds of Kansans. And if you look at the folks that are speaking in favor of them, there's a good handful that are out of state interests. So it's clear that these aren't issues that Kansans care about, and so it's frustrating to myself and to other Kansans that our legislature is spending so much time trying to legislate hate and instead of trying to, you know, address real issues that Kansans care about.
Yeah. I 100% agree. I mean, let's talk about the Kansas budget. Let's talk about education. If you want to protect women, why aren't we putting funding towards crisis centers, right? Why aren't we, the pay equity gap, that's something we could easily fix here in the state of Kansas. That's going to protect women, but those aren't the things that we're addressing in this bill. So, and I would also say, to DC's point, that at least for SB 180, not a single person who supported the bill was from the state of Kansas. If people in Kansas cared about this bill, they would have been there opposing it, but they weren't. So why are we spending time, taxpayer money on the thing that Kansans don't care about?
Now, Jay, I want to ask you about the experience when, not everyone, but for many, it is when you picture the transgender experience and the plight of the transgender community. For many, you picture the transgender woman.
Correct.
You don't really see the transgender man. Your experience as a transgender man, do you believe that it's quite different from that of a transgender woman?
For sure. I mean, first I want to say to our transgender sisters out there, that is a very marginalized community, right? Lacks of access to healthcare, housing, jobs. Overwhelmingly, every day we celebrate Transgender Day of Remembrance, where, at least that we know of, at least 40 to 50, often trans women of color, are murdered in broad daylight. It's an issue that happens year after, and that's just the ones we know about, right? We don't often hear about trans men being murdered. It doesn't say it doesn't happen, but overwhelmingly it's our trans sisters. So I want to be like clear that that is a marginalized community. I'm not dismissing that. And I think that trans men are invisible. People don't know that we exist. Oftentimes it is easier for us to blend into society. We just go about our days, do our things. So I think that's part of it. But I also think we have a unique experience of people who have grown up as women and now have male privilege.
So when you say invisible, do you mean it as in a bad way, or invisible as in you're able to assimilate a little bit more?
I would say both.
Okay.
I think definitely we have the ability to assimilate more, but I also think that because we aren't seen, our issues don't come to the top. For instance, trans men have a much higher rate of cervical cancer than anyone else with a vagina. The reason a lot of people think it has to do with hormones is because trans men don't go to the gynecologist. Why don't they go to the gynecologist? Because overwhelmingly, when you go to the gynecologist office, you see a bunch of women. If men are there, they're there with a woman. Or you have to go to a center for women's health care. A man doesn't want to do that, so trans men don't get the health care that they need for these reasons. Or, in my experience, I went to get a pap smear, as one does every year, and then it was denied by my insurance because my gender marker was not F. Of course, according to the Affordable Care Act, this is something that has to be covered legally, so I spent 3 months fighting my insurance company to pay for something that they should pay for. So there are different issues. We have things that we need to work on, different experiences, and yet people are targeting trans women while totally forgetting the experience of trans men and our non-binary friends.
Right, and I wanted to bring that up when Jay said invisible in both a good way and a bad way. You're transgender and non-binary, so you don't identify as a woman or a man. And so when you hear this conversation about SB 180 and they focus on women, woman, man, transgender woman, transgender man, what are your thoughts? Do you feel invisible?
Yeah, you know, I think it's frustrating for myself as a non-binary person and, you know, to other non-binary folks in the state. It's frustrating to intersex people that are being erased by the language of this bill. It's frustrating to other gender diverse folks that maybe don't identify with those labels but would be legislated out of existence from bills like this. And so to Jay's point, you know, you do feel invisible or sort of forgotten. But the other part that's frustrating when we're talking about these bills and sort of the fixation on just targeting trans women is, you know, legislators are kind of uplifting, protecting women. They're talking about fairness in women's sports. They're talking about protecting women's rights. And they're not really actually thinking about trans folks as, you know, the broad spectrum of humanity that we are. Where there's not just trans women, there's all sorts of trans people, just like there's all sorts of cisgender people. And I think that these bills sort of try to make humanity simple. They want it to be black and white, but that's not what human nature is, and that's not what gender is, that's not what sex is. And I think a little bit of it is just sort of this hesitancy for change But the world is existing around us every day, and non-binary people exist in Kansas. Intersex people exist in Kansas. They testified in opposition to this bill alongside Jay, and it's important that we acknowledge the real world that we live in, instead of trying to kind of hold on to a past world that doesn't exist.
And I would say one other thing is that I'd be remiss to say trans women are women. This bill is to try to erase trans women and act like they don't exist. But trans women are women. So if you want a bill of rights to protect women, you need to include trans women.
But on the proponent side of the bill, I know one of the testimony, it's mentioned, I know this young woman was from out of state, but she came into the state of Kansas and mentioned that, yes, the trans women, they can come into the locker room, and when they do, that it's uncomfortable for the biological women to see male anatomy. Do you not think that that's something that they're okay with being uncomfortable with?
Sorry.
Jerry, you go ahead.
I think that it's interesting we talk about that, because I think everyone should have a right to privacy. I believe that the ACLU, protects all Kansans civil liberties, including their right to privacy, and that just. It's sort of the improper framing when we're talking about it in that lens, because you should have a private space in your locker room if you don't feel comfortable exposing your body or being exposed to other folks' bodies that are in the sex segregated locker room with you, whether that's because there's other trans folks in there or for whatever privacy reasons you have. And so I think it's just sort of framing the issue in the incorrect way, because there's lots of reasons that people want privacy in changing spaces, and instead of antagonizing trans people and making it seem like trans people and our bodies are the issue, I think we should kind of reframe what we're talking about when we're talking about privacy rights.
I would just add to that, I don't think any trans person or person in general is going to the locker room so they can flash people, right? They're going in there to change. You would want access to privacy. I also think that this brings up another issue of, male anatomy or female anatomy. There are a lot of bills out there that are trying to stop trans people from not being able to get the gender-affirming surgery that they want. That doesn't mean that everyone wants the surgery or has access to it, but every trans woman isn't going to quote-unquote have male anatomy. You're talking about very specific people. Access to privacy fixes that. But I also think we just need to think more broadly that, you're talking about a specific person and their experience with a trans woman, but not every trans woman is going to look like that.
Okay, well, thanks for those comments. We're going to finish this conversation. Again, we'll take another quick break. We're talking about SB 180. We'll be right back. You're watching Inside Kansas Politics.
Mental health is about emotional health and brain health.
Healthy children and families.
And a healthy Kansas.
Go to acmhck.org to find your local community mental health center.
Doughboys Pizzeria, now with 2 locations in Topeka. Serving fresh pizza with our signature sauce, award-winning wings, awesome appetizers and desserts, with outdoor dining and entertainment. Call or order online at doughboys.pizza.
New Sound is hosting a dinner at the Bread Bowl in Hiawatha. If you have questions about hearing loss, hearing aids, tinnitus, or any of the recent FDA changes, this event is for you, and it's free. Call today for a reservation.
Hi, I'm Steve Matukowicz.
And I'm Diana Cox. Together with Washburn University, we're bringing you Everything Woman,
a 27-news series highlighting everyday women who do not get the recognition and attention they deserve. A special teacher, an encouraging coach, a work-from-home mom. Everyday women with their own unique stories.
If there's a special woman you'd like to nominate, go to KSNT.com and click on Everything Woman.
Everything Woman, sponsored by Sharp Honda, Topeka ER and Hospital, and Washburn University.
What is radon? Home exposure to radon gas is the leading cause of lung cancer death in the United States for non-smokers. In Kansas, 1 in 4 homes will test at or above the EPA action level. The Surgeon General recommends all homes be tested and fixed if necessary. Visit kansasradonprogram.org for more information. Test, fix, save a life.
I'm proud to have served my country and would like to help my fellow veterans receive the recognition they deserve. If you know a veteran you would like to see honored, nominate them for Veteran Salute at ksnt.com.
Veteran Salute, sponsored by Devon James Injury Lawyers.
Welcome back to Inside Kansas Politics. We are here with two opponents of SB 180, which is establishing the Women's Bill of Rights. When it comes to speaking of the transgender community, of course, there are a lot of misconceptions. And what do the both of you want people who don't understand the experience of someone who's transgender, someone who's non-binary? What would you say to those people who don't really know what your life is like? What do you want them to know?
I would want them to know that, we're not here to take over space or, be perverted or convert children. We're just trying to live our lives, right? We want access to homes, to jobs. We want to have families. We want to contribute to our economy, to our nation. We just want to live our lives. Now, there are parts of our experience that we did not align with, and so we want to be our authentic selves, which means that we are happy and productive citizens. That's all you need to know. We're not trying to take anything from you or make you unsafe. We want the same things that you want. We just want to live authentically.
And I think I'd just add, I agree with everything Jay said there, just to remember that trans people are just people. But not only that, that trans people have existed and will continue to exist. There's evidence of trans folks existing in the first civilizations that we've identified. We still exist today. There's an estimated 14,400 trans people that live in Kansas. You may know trans people and you may not know they're trans, but that just goes to show we're just people living our lives, in Kansas, and we like this state. It's our home. We want to be able to live our lives happily and live full and healthy lives, and these bills are stopping us from being able to do that.
And DC, I wanted to ask you, a lot of people throw out the word anti-trans when they hear certain bills. This is not just coming out of nowhere. There is actually guidelines that the ACLU follows to determine a bill to be anti-trans or anti-LGBT. What are those?
Yeah, for sure. So the ACLU National Offices tracks anti-LGBTQ legislation. There's over 390 anti-LGBTQ bills in the country right now, 12 in Kansas. And when we're talking about something that's anti-LGBTQ or specifically anti-trans, we're looking at the text of the bill. Does the text itself say something that's discriminatory or attacking trans or queer folks? But not just the text of the bill. And we do see folks, sometimes legislators in the Kansas State House will say, this bill doesn't even say the word transgender. How can it be anti-trans? Well, that's not the only type of discrimination there is. We know this from civil rights litigation that's been going on since the movement in the 60s. There's I'm going to get in my legal hat for a second, say some Latin terms, but there's de jure discrimination, which just means in law. The text says it's discriminatory. And there's de facto discrimination, which means in fact, or in effect, it's discriminatory. And that's what these bills are doing. And so we're tracking any bills that, whether they in the text of the bill itself or in the implication of the bill once it's passed into law, if they would be harmful to anti-trans people, or if they would be harmful to trans people, if they would be harmful to queer people, then we'll label them as anti-LGBTQ or anti-trans bills.
All right, so wrapping up our conversation about SB 180, we'll be right back. You're watching Inside Kansas Politics.
Vanderbilt's has one of the largest selections of boots and jeans in the area. Save $5 on new plaids, starting at $14.99. Hot price on the Twisted X casual boot, $139.99. Save $30 on Wolverine waterproof rancher boots. Hot price, $119.99. Stock up on Wrangler George Strait jeans, on sale, $39.99.
Work Boot Center, Vanderbilt.
Blind Tiger Brewery and Restaurant, 37th in Kansas.
Blind Tiger Brewery, the place for steaks.
We not only brew award-winning fresh local beer, we also feature tender, mouth-watering steak.
USDA choice sirloin, ribeye, and filet, hand-cut in the Blind Tiger kitchen and grilled to order.
Serving Topeka great food to family and friends for many years.
That's good.
Blind Tiger Brewery and Restaurant, 37th in Kansas.
What makes best reviews the best reviews?
Milk.
They have an unbiased team that researches products in real-world situations to give reliable recommendations on pretty much everything. So you can be confident that whatever you're buying is right for you, no matter what life throws at it. Like your daughter Clementine, for example. So the best reviews go to bestreviews.com. Seriously, before you buy anything, ever.
The story of Grace Med has always been told through its people, both those who serve and those who it is our honor to serve. We meet at the intersection of compassion and vulnerability, bringing health where there was illness and hope where there was despair. Our patients come to us bearing the weight of living in the margins, and we share the love of Jesus Christ with them by providing compassionate quality health care for all their physical, emotional, and spiritual needs. Because health restored is always hope renewed. Find hope today by scheduling an appointment with Grace Med.
Welcome back to Inside Kansas Politics. We spent today talking about SB 180, and you two are both against that bill. What can people in the state of Kansas or anywhere do to help out if they want to assist?
Yeah, I think if folks, one place that's really easy to start is contacting their representatives and letting them know that they're not in support of these bills, and they want to make sure that we're not legislating hate, and instead we're making Kansas, you know, a welcoming and safe state for everyone. I think if you're looking for specific action items, like you want to maybe get involved in a phone bank for trans rights, or you want to do an advocacy day at the State House, reach out to the ACLU of Kansas. We have volunteer opportunities, or look at our community partners that are doing a lot of this work, like Loud Light or Equality Kansas, to be a part of the movement that's happening all across the state to make Kansas a welcoming and safe space for everyone.
All right, Jay, DC, I want to thank you both for joining me today. Thank you. And we reached out to find someone to speak in favor of the bill, but we were unable to do so. And if you are a proponent of SB 180 and you would like to come on to the show, we do like to hear from both sides, so we invite you to sit down with us. And that was your look inside Kansas politics. If you want to keep up to date on all things Kansas politics, follow us on social media. You can follow us on Twitter at @InKansasPolitics. We'll also post the full video on YouTube. Just search KSNT News and check ksnt.com/inside-kansas-politics for all past episodes. And we will also post the full SB 180 bill on our website at ksnt.com as well. If you have a story you want Kansas state legislators to hear, let us know. We'll see you right here, same time, same place, next week.